Margaret Henderson, who everyone in town called Maggie, had just turned 72 last month. She lived in the same big farmhouse where she'd raised her children, way out on Miller Road, about 3 miles from the nearest town in Montana. The house was too big for just one person, her daughter always said, but Maggie couldn't imagine living anywhere else. This was home. Every corner held a memory of her late husband, Tom. It was a Thursday evening in December when everything changed. Maggie was in her kitchen, listening to the old radio on the counter while she chopped vegetables for dinner. The announcer's voice suddenly turned serious. A massive blizzard was heading their way, much bigger than what the weather people had predicted that morning. It was moving fast, they said. Really fast. People needed to get home and stay inside. Maggie walked to her front window and pulled back the yellow curtain. The sky had turned an ugly gray color, the kind that means trouble is coming. She'd lived in Montana her whole life, 72 years, and she knew what that sky meant. Big snow was on its way. She got to work right away. First, she brought in extra firewood from the covered porch, stacking it neatly by the stone fireplace in the living room. Her knees weren't what they used to be, so it took a few trips, but she got it done. Then she checked the pantry. Plenty of canned soup, some bread, coffee, and the ham she'd planned to cook this weekend. Good enough if the power went out. By 6 o'clock, the snow had started. Not the gentle, pretty kind you see on Christmas cards. This was serious snow, coming down thick and heavy, the kind that piles up fast. The wind picked up too, howling around the corners of the old house. Maggie lit the fireplace and put a big pot of vegetable soup on the stove. The house filled with warmth and the smell of cooking onions and carrots. She settled into Tom's old recliner with a blanket and her book, but she couldn't focus on reading. Something made her keep looking out the window. Maybe it was living alone for 5 years now. You develop instincts when you're by yourself. You notice things. Around 7:30 she saw them, headlights, moving slowly, very slowly, down Miller Road. At first she thought it might be her neighbor checking on her, but as the lights got closer, she realized there were multiple vehicles. No, not vehicles, motorcycles. A whole group of them fighting against the snow and wind. Maggie's heart jumped. Those poor people were going to freeze out there. The temperature had already dropped below 20 degrees, and with the wind it felt much colder. Nobody should be on a motorcycle in weather like this. She watched as they slowed down even more, clearly struggling. One of the bikes wobbled dangerously. Without thinking twice, Maggie grabbed her heavy winter coat from the hook by the door and pulled on her boots. She didn't bother with a hat. She pushed open the front door and the wind nearly knocked her back. Snow stung her face. She walked down her porch steps, waving her arms. The lead motorcycle had already passed her driveway, but the rider saw her in his mirrors. He stopped, and one by one, the motorcycles behind him stopped too. The lead rider turned his bike around carefully on the slippery road and pulled up closer to her driveway. He lifted his face shield. His beard was covered in ice. "Ma'am, you shouldn't be out here," he shouted over the wind. "Neither should you," Maggie shouted back. "Come inside. All of you. You'll die out here." The man hesitated. She could see him looking back at his group, then at her house, then at her. He was doing math in his head, she could tell, wondering if this was safe, if this was right. "I'm serious," Maggie said, her voice firm like when she used to scold her kids. "I've got a warm house, hot soup, and plenty of space. You're not riding in this. Come on now." Maybe it was the motherly tone. Maybe it was the fact that they couldn't see 5 feet in front of them anymore. Maybe it was both. The man nodded and signaled to the others. Slowly, carefully, all 15 motorcycles turned into Maggie's long driveway. She led them toward the barn beside her house, where they could park their bikes under cover. The barn was old but solid, and it would protect the motorcycles from the worst of the snow. The riders looked exhausted, their leather jackets crusted with ice and snow. Some of them were shivering badly. "Leave your bikes here and come inside," Maggie said. "Quickly now." She counted them as they filed past her toward the house. 15 people. All adults, thank goodness. A mix of men and women, all wearing motorcycle club vests under their jackets. She could see patches and symbols she didn't quite understand, but that didn't matter right now. Inside her warm house, the bikers stood awkwardly in the entryway, dripping melted snow onto her floor. They looked tough with their leather and boots and rough faces, but Maggie had raised 3 boys. Tough didn't scare her. "Don't just stand there," she said, already pulling towels from the hall closet. "Get those wet jackets off before you catch pneumonia." Hang them by the fireplace. There's a bathroom down that hall if you need it, and another one upstairs. Make yourselves at home. A woman with short gray hair and kind eyes was the first to speak. Ma'am, we can't thank you enough. I'm Linda. We were heading back from Billings when the storm hit. We thought we could make it to the next town, but you couldn't, Maggie finished. And that's fine. I'm Maggie. Now sit down, all of you. I've got soup on the stove and I'm going to make coffee. You look half frozen. The lead rider, the one with the icy beard, stepped forward. I'm Jake, this is really kind of you. We don't want to be any trouble. Maggie waved her hand dismissively. Trouble, please. This house used to hold family reunions with 30 people. 15 is nothing. Besides, what else am I going to do tonight? Sit here alone? At least now I have company. As the bikers began to relax and remove their wet gear, Maggie bustled into her kitchen. Through the doorway she could hear them talking quietly among themselves, their voices filled with relief and disbelief at their good fortune. Outside, the blizzard raged harder, the wind screaming around the house. Maggie stirred her soup and smiled to herself. Tom would have done the same thing. He always said their door was open to anyone who needed help. Tonight she was carrying on his tradition. She had no idea that this simple act of kindness was about to change her life in ways she never could have imagined. Jake stood in Maggie's living room, feeling completely out of place. His leather vest, covered with patches from 20 years of riding, hung dripping by the fireplace. His arms felt bare without it. Strange. He glanced around at his group. They all looked the same way, uncomfortable. These were people who spent their lives on the road, sleeping in tents, eating at truck stops. Nobody ever invited them into their homes like this. The living room was exactly what you'd expect from a grandmother's house. Floral couch, doilies on the side tables, family photos covering every wall. A wooden cross hung above the fireplace. Everything was clean and organized. Jake noticed an American flag folded in a triangular case on the mantel, the kind they give to widows at military funerals. Your husband served? Jake asked Maggie as she came in carrying a tray with steaming mugs of coffee. Maggie smiled, but sadness flickered in her eyes. 22 years in the Army. Vietnam, 2 tours. He passed 5 years ago, cancer. Jake nodded slowly. Thank you for his service. I'm sorry for your loss. Were you military? Maggie asked, handing him a mug. Marines, Afghanistan, 3 tours. Most of us here served. That's kind of what our club is about. Veterans helping veterans. Maggie's whole face lit up. Well then, you're especially welcome here. Tom always said we needed to take care of our veterans better. He'd be happy to know I've got a house full of them tonight. Linda, the woman with short gray hair, came over with her own coffee. Her hands were finally starting to warm up. Ma'am, we were coming back from a toy drive in Billings. We collect toys for kids in children's hospitals. We do it every December. That's wonderful, Maggie said. So you're the good kind of motorcycle club then? Jake laughed, really laughed for the first time that evening. Yes, ma'am. We're definitely the good kind. No trouble here, I promise. We're just a bunch of old veterans who like to ride and help people when we can. More of the group had gathered in the living room now, warming themselves by the fire. A tall man named Raymond, who had served in the Navy, pointed to a photo on the wall. Is that your husband's unit in Vietnam? Maggie brought over the framed photo. Yes, that's Tom, 3rd from the left. 1st Cavalry Division, 1969. Raymond's eyes widened. 1st Cav? I'll be damned. My uncle was 1st Cav. And Danny over there. He pointed to a younger man across the room. His dad was 1st Cav too, served in the 90s. Danny came over to look at the photo. He was probably in his early 40s with gray starting to show in his dark hair. My dad talked about Vietnam vets all the time. Said they didn't get the welcome home they deserved. Ma'am, your husband was a hero. He was just a man doing his job, Maggie said softly. But thank you. He'd like knowing you all are here. He always said military folks look after each other. The smell of soup was getting stronger and Maggie excused herself to the kitchen. Linda followed her. Can I help with something? You certainly can, Maggie said. There are bowls in that cabinet. I don't think I have 15 matching ones, but we'll make do. Linda started pulling down bowls, a mix of different patterns and colors. This reminds me of my grandmother's house. She'd feed anyone who showed up. Half the neighborhood would end up at her table. That's how it should be, Maggie said, stirring the big pot. People need to look after each other more. Seems like everybody's so busy these days. They forget about simple kindness. In the living room, the bikers were starting to relax. Someone had found Maggie's old record player and was looking through her collection of records. Another person was adding logs to the fire. Jake noticed a shelf full of books about farming and Montana history. Above it hung photos of 3 boys at various ages. "Your sons?" Jake asked when Maggie came back. "Yes. Michael lives in Seattle now, works for some computer company. David's in Texas, he's a teacher. And my youngest, Bobby, he's in Denver, runs a restaurant." She paused. "They want me to sell this place and move closer to one of them. They think I'm too old to manage this farm alone. Are you thinking about it?" Linda asked gently. Maggie was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. The property taxes keep going up. Maintenance on a house this old is expensive. My retirement doesn't stretch as far as it used to. But this is my home. Tom and I built our life here. I raised my boys here. The thought of leaving..." She trailed off, then shook her head. "But listen to me, bringing down the mood. Come on, soup's ready." They all gathered in the dining room and kitchen, finding places to sit. Some sat at the big dining table. Others on kitchen chairs brought in from other rooms. A few sat on the floor with their bowls. It didn't matter. The soup was hot and delicious, filled with vegetables and chunks of potato. "This is the best meal I've had in weeks," said Tommy, a biker with a thick mustache. "No offense to diner food, but this is real cooking." "My mama taught me," Maggie said. "She said if you can't feed people proper, you're not doing your job as a host." As they ate, the stories started flowing. Raymond talked about his time on an aircraft carrier. Linda shared how she'd been one of the first women in her Army unit back in the 80s. Danny described the charity work their club did, everything from toy drives to building ramps for disabled veterans. Jake found himself studying Maggie. She was genuinely interested in everyone's stories, asking questions, remembering details. She didn't show any fear or judgment. Even though 15 strangers in leather had just invaded her home, she treated them like family. "You know what you remind me of?" Jake said suddenly. "My grandmother. She passed 10 years ago, but she was just like you. Tough, kind, didn't take nonsense from anybody." "Sounds like she was smart," Maggie said with a grin. Outside, the wind howled louder. Snow was piling up against the windows. Tommy got up to look outside and whistled. "It's really coming down. We'd have been in serious trouble out there." "Well, you're not out there," Maggie said firmly. "You're safe and warm. I've got plenty of blankets and pillows. We'll figure out sleeping arrangements after dinner." A woman named Beth, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Ma'am, I've got to say, most people see us coming and lock their doors. They see the leather and the motorcycles and they think we're trouble. But you just opened your door without hesitation." Maggie shrugged. "I raised 3 boys. Takes more than leather jackets to scare me. Besides, Tom taught me something important. He said you can usually tell good people from bad people by looking in their eyes. I looked in your eyes," she nodded at Jake, "and I saw someone I could trust. Turned out I was right." Jake felt something catch in his throat. He'd spent years feeling like society had given up on veterans like him. Like people crossed the street when they saw him coming. But this elderly woman had taken one look at him in the middle of a blizzard and decided he was worth trusting. "Worth saving. We won't forget this," he said quietly. "Any of us. This is something special." Maggie just smiled and started collecting empty bowls. But she didn't know that Jake was already making plans in his head. Plans that would change everything by morning. After dinner, nobody wanted to go to sleep right away. The combination of warm food, the crackling fire, and Maggie's hospitality had created something special. Something none of them wanted to end just yet. They naturally gathered back in the living room, some sitting on the couch and chairs, others on the floor with cushions Maggie had brought out. The blizzard continued its assault on the house, rattling windows and piling snow against the walls. But inside, everything felt safe and peaceful. Maggie had made more coffee and brought out some cookies she'd baked earlier in the week. She settled into her rocking chair, the one Tom had made for her 40th birthday. "Tell me about Tom," Linda said softly. "If you don't mind talking about him." Maggie's face brightened. "I never mind talking about Tom. We met when we were both 17. Can you believe that? He was so handsome in his leather jacket. I thought he was out of my league, but he asked me to a dance, and that was that. We got married right after high school." She got up and brought over a photo album, the old kind with the plastic pages that stick to the photos. The bikers gathered around as she flipped through pictures. Young Tom in his Army uniform, looking serious and proud. Tom and Maggie on their wedding day, both impossibly young. Tom holding babies, then toddlers, then boys with baseball bats and fishing rods. He looks like a good man, Raymond said. The best, Maggie said. He worked this farm every day, taught our boys how to be men, how to work hard, how to treat people right. When he got sick, he never complained, not once. He just kept telling me he'd had a good life and he was grateful for every day. Danny pointed to a photo of Tom in front of the barn. That barn out there, is it still being used? Not really, Maggie admitted. I rent out some of the land to a neighbor for his cattle, but the barn mostly just sits empty now. Tom kept all his tools and equipment in there. I don't have the strength to farm anymore and I can't afford to hire help. Jake had been listening quietly. He stood up suddenly. Maggie, would you mind if some of us looked at a few things around the house? I noticed your porch has some loose boards and that door to the kitchen sticks pretty bad. Oh, you don't need to do that, Maggie protested. We want to, Beth said firmly. You saved our lives tonight. Let us help a little. Before Maggie could argue more, Tommy and Raymond were already examining the squeaky kitchen door. Beth and Linda went to check out the porch situation. Danny found Tom's old toolbox in the basement, right where Maggie said it would be. This is good stuff, Danny said, running his hand over the well-maintained tools. Your husband took care of his equipment. He took care of everything, Maggie said. He'd be happy to see his tools being used again. For the next 2 hours, the house filled with the sounds of work. Hammering, the scrape of sandpaper, the squeak of screws being tightened. Jake and Tommy reinforced the loose porch boards. Raymond fixed the kitchen door and adjusted 2 other doors that weren't hanging quite right. Beth and Linda organized Maggie's cluttered pantry, making everything easier to reach. A younger biker named Chris found a loose board in the stairs and nailed it down. My grandma fell because of something like this, he said. Can't have that happening to you. Maggie tried to help, but they kept making her sit down. You've done enough, Linda told her. You gave us shelter. You fed us. You treated us like family. Now let us give back a little. While the others worked, Maggie sat with Jake by the fireplace. He was looking at more photos, particularly the military ones. You miss it? Maggie asked. The military? Jake took a long breath. Sometimes. I miss the purpose, you know? The clear mission. Civilian life is harder in some ways. Everything's complicated. Nobody tells you what to do or where to go. Is that why you joined the motorcycle club? Yeah, after I got back from my last tour, I was lost. Really lost. Couldn't hold a job. Couldn't sleep. Kept pushing people away. I was heading down a bad road. He paused, staring at the fire. Then I met Linda at a VA hospital. She told me about the club. Said it was for veterans who needed a new mission, a new family. And it helped? Saved my life, Jake said simply. These people here, they're my brothers and sisters. We look after each other. We ride together, work on charity projects together. When one of us is struggling, the others step in. It gave me purpose again. Maggie nodded, understanding in her eyes. Tom struggled too after Vietnam. Not as bad as some, but he had nightmares for years. He said the only thing that kept him going was having a family to care for. A mission, like you said, taking care of this farm, raising our boys, being part of the community. You must miss him terribly. Every single day, Maggie said softly, but I keep going. That's what he'd want. And I've got my boys, even if they're far away. I've got my memories. I've got this house. She paused, then added quietly, though I'm not sure how much longer I'll have it. The truth is, money's been tight. Really tight. The property taxes went up again this year, and I'm behind on payments. There's over $40,000 in back taxes plus penalties. The county sent me a letter last month. If I don't pay by March, they're going to take the farm. Jake looked at her sharply. Maggie, are your sons helping you? They offer, but they've got their own families, their own bills. I don't want to burden them. I keep thinking I'll figure something out, but she trailed off, looking around her living room. This house has been in my family for 3 generations. Losing it would break my heart. Jake was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. Excuse me for a minute, he said, walking into the kitchen. Maggie watched him go, confused. Through the doorway, she could see him typing rapidly, his face serious and focused. Tommy came down from upstairs. All the bedroom doors are working smooth now. And Chris tightened that loose railing on your stairs. You all are too much, Maggie said, but she was smiling. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Tommy said. You opened your door in a blizzard. That's thanks enough. Beth came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Your pantry's all organized now. Everything you use most is at eye level. The heavy stuff is on lower shelves so you don't have to reach. One by one, the bikers finished their tasks. The porch was solid. The doors worked smoothly. The stairs were safe. Small things, but important things. Things that showed they cared. Around midnight, they started settling down to sleep. Maggie brought out every blanket and pillow she owned. Some people took the couches. Others spread blankets on the floor. A few went upstairs to the guest rooms. I feel like I'm hosting a slumber party, Maggie joked. Except with bikers instead of teenagers. Linda laughed. We're probably better behaved than teenagers. Speak for yourself, Raymond called out, making everyone laugh. As Maggie headed to her bedroom, Jake caught her arm gently. Thank you again, Maggie. For everything. You're a special person. You're all special too, she said. Tom would have loved meeting you. He always said the veteran community was the best kind of family. In her room, Maggie changed into her nightgown and knelt beside her bed, like she did every night. She prayed for her boys, for Tom's soul, for her own strength. Tonight she added prayers for the 15 people sleeping in her house. Good people who'd found themselves in a bad situation just like she had. She didn't know that in the kitchen, Jake was still on his phone, sending message after message to people across 3 states. She didn't know that those messages were spreading like wildfire through the veteran motorcycle community. She didn't know that by morning everything would change. All she knew was that tonight her house felt alive again, full of laughter and conversation and purpose. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel alone. And that was worth more than she could say. Around 2 a.m, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay on the couch in Maggie's living room, listening to the storm outside and the soft sounds of people sleeping around him. Raymond was snoring gently in the recliner. Beth had fallen asleep on the floor with 2 pillows and a thick quilt. Everyone else was scattered throughout the house, finally warm and safe. But Jake's mind wouldn't quiet down. He kept thinking about what Maggie had said about losing the farm. $40,000. For some people, that might not seem like much. But for a widow on a fixed income, it might as well be $1 million. And the thought of her losing this house, this piece of history, this home that meant everything to her, it made something burn in his chest. He heard a sound and looked up. Maggie was shuffling into the kitchen in her bathrobe and slippers, trying to be quiet. Jake got up and followed her. Couldn't sleep either, he asked softly. Maggie jumped a little, then smiled when she saw him. Just getting some water. Would you like some? Sure. They sat at her kitchen table, the same one where they'd eaten soup hours earlier. A small lamp in the corner gave off soft light. Outside, the snow had finally stopped, but the wind still rattled the windows occasionally. You're worried about something, Maggie said. It wasn't a question. Jake smiled sadly. Is it that obvious? I raised 3 boys, remember? I know when someone has something on their mind. Jake was quiet for a moment, turning his glass in his hands. Can I tell you something? Something I don't talk about much? Of course. When I came back from Afghanistan the last time, I was in bad shape. Really bad. I'd seen things, done things that I couldn't stop thinking about. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in a panic, thinking I was still there. Loud noises made me jump. Crowds made me anxious. I couldn't hold down a job because I'd snap at people or just not show up. Maggie reached across the table and put her hand on his. She didn't say anything, just listened. My wife left me. Can't say I blame her. I was impossible to live with. My friends didn't know how to handle me, so they stopped calling. I ended up living in my truck for a while, moving from parking lot to parking lot. I thought about ending it all. More than once. Oh, Jake, Maggie whispered. Then one night I was at a gas station trying to figure out where to go next, and this woman walked up to me. Linda. She looked at me, and somehow she just knew. She'd been there too, you see. She understood. She gave me a phone number and said to call if I needed anything. Said there were people who could help. Jake paused, remembering that night 3 years ago, how Linda's simple kindness had felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. I called the number a week later. It was the motorcycle club. They invited me to a meeting. I almost didn't go. I thought, what's the point? But something made me show up. And those people, they didn't judge me. They didn't treat me like I was broken. They treated me like I was a brother who'd lost his way and just needed help finding the path again. They saved you, Maggie said. They did. They gave me purpose again. taught me to ride, which I'd never done before, gave me projects to work on, invited me on charity rides, made me feel useful, like I mattered. Within 6 months, I had a job. Within a year, I had my own place. I started sleeping through the night. I wasn't fixed, not completely, but I was better. So much better. That's a powerful story, Maggie said. I'm telling you this because tonight you did for us what Linda and the club did for me. You saw people in trouble and you helped. No questions, no judgment, just pure kindness. And when you told me about possibly losing this farm, Jake's voice got thick. I can't stand the thought of someone like you, someone who opens their door to strangers in a storm, losing everything because of money. Maggie squeezed his hand. That's life sometimes, Jake. Things happen. We deal with them. But what if you didn't have to deal with it alone? What if there was another way? Maggie looked confused. What do you mean? Jake pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. After you went to bed, I sent messages to every veteran motorcycle club in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho. I told them your story. About Tom's service. About you taking us in tonight. About the farm and the taxes. Maggie's eyes widened. Jake, you didn't have to do that. I wanted to. And Maggie, you should see the responses. He scrolled through his phone. Look, this club in Bozeman wants to help. This group from Cheyenne, these guys from Coeur d'Alene. They're all asking how they can contribute. Some are pledging money. Others are offering to come help with work on the farm. It's spreading like wildfire. I don't understand, Maggie said, tears forming in her eyes. Why would strangers want to help me? Because you're one of us. You're a veteran's widow, and you embody everything we believe in. Service, sacrifice, taking care of each other. When I told them how you opened your door without hesitation, how you fed us and treated us like family, every single person who read that message felt it in their heart. Jake showed her more messages. They kept coming in, even at 2 a.m. Short messages, count me in. How much does she need? I can donate. When can we ride out there? Let me know what we can do. Maggie was crying now, tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You just have to let us help, the way you helped us tonight. They sat in silence for a while, Maggie wiping her eyes with a tissue Jake handed her. The kitchen felt warm and safe, a cocoon against the cold world outside. You know what Tom used to tell me? Maggie said finally. He said the world is full of good people who want to do good things. They just need a chance to show it. I think he was right. He definitely was, Jake said. He also said that accepting help is just as important as giving it, that it's not a weakness to need people, that we're all in this life together. Jake smiled. Your husband sounds like he was a wise man. He was. And he'd tell me to let you all help if you want to. He'd say that pride has no place when good people offer kindness. So you'll let us? Maggie nodded, fresh tears coming. Yes, I will. And thank you, Jake. Thank you so much. They hugged across the table. An old woman and a broken veteran who'd found healing, brought together by a blizzard and bound by simple human kindness. Try to get some sleep, Jake said gently. I have a feeling tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day. Maggie laughed through her tears. I think you might be right. She went back to her bedroom, feeling lighter than she had in months, maybe years. In the kitchen, Jake sat for a while longer, watching the messages continue to pour into his phone. The veteran community was rallying. They were coming together for one of their own. He thought about how lost he'd been just a few years ago, how close he'd come to giving up, and now here he was, helping orchestrate something beautiful, something that would change Maggie's life. Linda's voice came from the doorway, soft and knowing. Can't sleep? Just thinking, Jake said. She came and sat next to him. You're doing a good thing here. We're doing a good thing. All of us. She reminds me of why we do this, Linda said. Why the club matters. It's not about the motorcycles or the leather or looking tough. It's about taking care of each other, finding purpose in service. Exactly, Jake said. They sat together in comfortable silence, two veterans who understood each other perfectly. Outside, the first hints of dawn were starting to lighten the sky. The storm had passed. The air was clear and cold. And somewhere out there on highways across 3 states, people were getting ready to ride. Jake looked at his phone one more time. 103 messages now. 103 people ready to help. He smiled. Tomorrow morning, he said to Linda, is going to blow Maggie's mind. Good, Linda said. She deserves it. They finally went to sleep as the sun started to rise, both of them feeling that wonderful sensation of being part of something bigger than themselves. Something that mattered. Something that would remind an elderly widow that she wasn't alone, and that her kindness to strangers on a winter night would be repaid 100 times over. Maggie woke to a sound she'd never heard before, at least not in the 5 years since Tom died. It was a rumble, deep and powerful like distant thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It was engines. Motorcycle engines. Lots of them. She sat up in bed, confused. The clock on her nightstand said 7:30. Through her bedroom window, she could see clear blue sky. The storm had passed. Everything outside was buried under at least 2 feet of fresh snow, sparkling white in the morning sun. But that sound, that rumbling sound kept growing louder. Maggie got out of bed and went to her window. What she saw made her gasp out loud and put her hand to her chest. Her street, Miller Road, which normally only saw a car or two per day, was lined with motorcycles. Not just a few, not even a dozen. There had to be at least 100 of them, maybe more. They stretched down both sides of the road as far as she could see. Some were still arriving, carefully navigating the snowy road, their engines creating that incredible rumbling sound. "What in the world?" Maggie whispered. She threw on her bathrobe and hurried out of her bedroom. In her living room, Jake, Linda, and the others were already awake, grinning like kids on Christmas morning. "What's happening?" Maggie asked. "Why are there so many motorcycles?" Jake walked over and gently guided her to the front door. "Come see." He opened the door and Maggie stepped out onto her porch. The cold hit her immediately, but she barely noticed. She was too busy staring at the scene in front of her. Motorcycles everywhere. Big ones, small ones, shiny ones, weathered ones. And bikers. So many bikers. They were unloading things from trailers hitched to some of the bikes. Lumber, tools, boxes of food, bags of supplies. Someone had set up folding tables on her front lawn. Others were organizing equipment. A few were taking photos. A big man with a gray beard walked up to her porch, his boots crunching in the snow. "You must be Maggie." "I'm Frank. Came up from Bozeman with 20 riders. Heard you could use some help." Before Maggie could respond, a woman in a leather jacket came over. "I'm Patricia. Rode in from Cheyenne with 15 people. We brought food and some money we collected." Then another person. And another. And another. All introducing themselves, all saying they'd come to help. Maggie felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. This had to be a dream. Jake put his arm around her shoulders to steady her. "Remember last night when I sent those messages?" Well, the word spread fast. Really fast. "These folks have been riding since about 4 this morning, some even earlier. They want to help you, Maggie." "But I don't understand," Maggie said, her voice shaking. "I don't know any of these people." Linda came and stood on her other side. "You don't have to know them. They know about you. They know you're a veteran's widow. They know you opened your home to strangers in a storm. That's all they need to know." A younger man approached, maybe 30 years old. "Ma'am, I'm Kevin. I'm a contractor. I brought my crew. We're going to fix up anything on this property that needs fixing. No charge. We're honored to do it." An older woman with kind eyes came next. "I'm Dorothy. I organized a food drive last night through social media. We've got enough groceries to fill your pantry for 6 months, maybe more." Maggie started crying. She couldn't help it. The tears just came, flowing down her cheeks as more and more people introduced themselves and explained why they'd come. Some had driven 5 hours. Others had ridden through freezing temperatures just to get here. All for her, a woman they'd never met. "This is too much," she sobbed. "I can't accept all this." "Yes, you can," Jake said firmly but gently. "This is what we do. This is who we are. We take care of our own, and you're one of our own now." By 8 o'clock, the whole operation was in full swing. Someone had brought a generator because they weren't sure if Maggie's electricity could handle all the power tools. Others had brought space heaters to keep people warm while they worked outside. A group was already working on the porch, not just fixing Jake's quick repairs from last night, but completely rebuilding it. Kevin, the contractor, had brought enough lumber to do the job right. "This porch should last another 50 years when we're done," he told Maggie. In the barn, a team was organizing and cleaning. They found Tom's old tractor, which hadn't run in 3 years. 2 mechanics immediately got to work on it. "We'll have this baby running by tonight," one of them promised. Inside the house, women were organizing the kitchen and pantry with all the donated food. Canned goods, pasta, rice, flour, sugar, coffee, tea, fresh vegetables and fruit that someone had brought in coolers, meat for the freezer, even some treats and desserts. You won't need to buy groceries for months, Dorothy told her. And if you do need something, you call me. I'm only 20 minutes away. A crew was working on the roof replacing some shingles that had been damaged over the years. Another team was painting the barn, which had needed it for a long time. Someone was fixing the fence that ran along the property. Others were clearing snow from the driveway and walkways with plows attached to trucks. Maggie walked around in a daze, trying to take it all in. Everywhere she looked, people were working. Hammering, sawing, painting, organizing. The air smelled like coffee from the big urn someone had set up, and fresh donuts from the local bakery that someone had picked up. Tommy found her standing in her yard, just staring at everything. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't even know," Maggie said honestly. "I feel like I'm in a dream. A wonderful, impossible dream." "It's real," Tommy said, smiling. "This is what happens when good people come together for a good cause." "And you're a very good cause, Maggie?" A news van pulled up around 9 o'clock, then another. Word had spread beyond the biker community. Local reporters had heard about what was happening and wanted to cover the story. A young reporter approached Maggie with a camera crew. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm from Channel 7 News. Can we talk to you about what's happening here?" Maggie looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath and agreed. "Mrs. Henderson, can you tell us how this all started?" the reporter asked. Maggie told the story, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. About the blizzard. About seeing the bikers struggling in the storm. About inviting them in without a second thought. She talked about Tom and his military service. About how these people had reminded her that there was still so much good in the world. The reporter then interviewed Jake, who explained about the veteran motorcycle clubs and their mission to help veterans and their families. He talked about Maggie's kindness and how it had inspired this massive response. "We take care of our own," Jake said into the camera. "Mrs. Henderson is a veteran's widow who showed us incredible kindness. This is us showing kindness back. This is what community looks like." By 10 o'clock, the story was already being shared online. People were posting photos and videos on social media. The hashtag Kindness Matters started trending locally, then regionally. Comments poured in from people inspired by the story. Beth found Maggie in the kitchen, sitting at her table with a cup of tea, just trying to process everything. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up," Maggie said. "Yesterday morning I was alone, worried about losing my home, wondering how I was going to manage. And now—" She gestured toward the window where dozens of people could be seen working. "Now this. You deserve this," Beth said. "You deserve every bit of this goodness." Raymond came in, covered in dust from working in the barn. "Maggie, you need to see this. We found some of Tom's old stuff in the barn. Photos, medals, his uniform. Do you want us to bring it all in?" Maggie's face lit up. "I thought those were lost." "Yes, please." "Oh my goodness, yes." As Raymond went to get the boxes, Maggie turned to Beth with tears in her eyes again. "Tom's medals. I haven't seen those in years. I thought they were gone forever." "Nothing's gone," Beth said softly. "Everything lost is being found today." And it was true. As the morning wore on, Maggie felt pieces of her life being restored. The physical pieces, yes. The house was being repaired, the property maintained, the bills about to be paid, but also the emotional pieces, the sense of community she'd been missing, the feeling of being cared for, the reminder that she wasn't alone in this world. Jake found her around noon, standing in her front yard watching everyone work. "You should eat something," he said. "Someone brought sandwiches." "In a minute," Maggie said. "I just want to watch a little longer. I want to remember this moment forever." "Oh, there are plenty of photos and videos being taken," Jake said with a laugh. "You'll be able to remember this forever." "Good," Maggie said, smiling through her tears. "Because this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." And it was. 100 people, most of them strangers to each other 24 hours ago, working together with one purpose: to help someone who needed it. To repay kindness with kindness. To prove that humanity at its core is good. By early afternoon, Maggie's property had transformed into something that looked like a community festival mixed with a construction site. The work was happening everywhere, but it was organized chaos. Kevin, the contractor, had taken charge of coordinating the different work crews, making sure everyone knew what to do and nobody got in each other's way. The porch was completely rebuilt. Not just fixed, but actually rebuilt with new wood, new supports, new railings. It looked better than it had in 30 years. The workers had even added a beautiful white railing with decorative posts that made the whole front of the house look welcoming. Tom always wanted to fix that porch, Maggie told Kevin, running her hand along the smooth new wood. He just never got around to it. He'd be so happy to see this. It's built to last, Kevin said proudly. Your great-grandchildren will be sitting on this porch someday. Inside the house, the transformation was just as dramatic. A retired electrician named Harold had discovered some old wiring that was dangerous. This could have caused a fire, he told Maggie seriously. Good thing we found it. He'd spent the morning replacing it, making sure everything was safe and up to code. A plumber had fixed 3 leaky faucets and a toilet that had been running constantly. That running toilet was probably costing you an extra $50 a month in water bills, he explained. Such a simple fix, but one Maggie hadn't known how to do herself and couldn't afford to hire someone for. Dorothy and her team had completely reorganized Maggie's kitchen. They'd cleaned out expired food, organized the pantry so everything was easy to reach, and labeled all the shelves. The refrigerator and freezer were now packed with fresh food, all neatly arranged. I made you a list of what's in here and when it expires, Dorothy said, handing Maggie a printed sheet. This way you won't forget what you have. And see these sticky notes? Those are easy meal ideas using the ingredients you have. Some days you just don't want to think about cooking, so these should help. Maggie hugged her. You're so thoughtful. Thank you. Out in the barn, the mechanics had gotten Tom's old tractor running. The sound of that engine turning over brought Maggie running. She stood in the barn doorway, tears streaming down her face, listening to the familiar rumble. That's the sound of my marriage, she said to no one in particular. Tom on that tractor every spring getting ready to plant. Every fall bringing in the harvest. I thought I'd never hear it again. One of the mechanics, a man named George, wiped his greasy hands on a rag. She runs smooth now. We changed the oil, replaced the spark plug's new battery, fixed the carburetor. This baby's got plenty of life left in her. The barn itself had been transformed too. Years of accumulated junk had been sorted. Useful tools were organized on the walls. Broken items were either fixed or properly disposed of. The whole space had been swept clean. Someone had even patched holes in the roof where rain had been leaking in. Around 2 o'clock, more vehicles started arriving. Not motorcycles this time, but regular cars and trucks. Local people from town who'd heard about what was happening and wanted to help. Mrs. Chen, who owned the Chinese restaurant in town, showed up with enough food to feed everyone working. You all need lunch, she said. This is on me. The local hardware store owner, Bill Peterson, arrived with his truck full of supplies. I heard you folks might need some extra materials, he said. Consider it donated. Even the mayor showed up, a friendly man named Robert who'd known Maggie and Tom for years. Maggie, this is incredible, he said, looking around at all the activity. The whole town's talking about it. More news crews arrived throughout the afternoon. Not just local stations now, but regional ones too. The story was spreading. A kind grandmother who'd helped strangers in a storm, and how those strangers had organized a massive response to help her. It was the kind of good news story that people were hungry for. Jake did most of the interviews, but he always made sure to bring Maggie into them. He wanted people to understand that this wasn't about the bikers looking good. It was about recognizing genuine kindness and responding to it. Mrs. Henderson didn't help us because she wanted something back, Jake told one reporter. She helped us because it was the right thing to do. She saw people in trouble and acted. No hesitation. That's heroism in my book. That's the kind of person worth celebrating. A financial advisor named Carol, who rode with one of the clubs, had been working with Maggie all afternoon on her paperwork. She'd helped Maggie organize her bills, understand her expenses, and create a real budget. You've been spending too much on some things you don't need, Carol explained gently, like this cable package. You're paying for 200 channels, but you told me you only watch about 5. We can cut that bill in half. And your phone plan? Same thing. Too much for what you actually use. They went through everything line by line. Carol found ways to reduce Maggie's monthly expenses by almost $300. That's $3,600 a year, Carol said. That's real money. That can help you stay ahead. But the biggest surprise came around 3 o'clock. Jake asked Maggie to come outside and stand on her new porch. Everyone stopped working. The whole crowd of people, over 100 of them, gathered in front of the house. Jake stood next to Maggie and pulled an envelope from his jacket. Maggie, we've been collecting donations all morning. From everyone here. From people online who heard your story. From veteran groups across the country. I want you to open this. Maggie's hand shook as she took the envelope. Inside was a check. She looked at the amount and her knees almost gave out. $47,000. That's enough to pay your property taxes, all the back payments and penalties, and have some left over for anything else you need, Jake said. His voice was thick with emotion. You're not losing this farm, Maggie. You're keeping it. It's yours. It's staying yours. Maggie couldn't speak. She just held the check and cried. Linda and Beth rushed up to support her, both of them crying too. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Speech! Speech! Someone called out. Maggie wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. She looked out at all these people, these beautiful, generous people, who'd given their time, their skills, their money to help her. A stranger. Someone most of them had never met before today. I don't have fancy words, she began, her voice quavering. I'm just a simple woman who lives on a farm. But I want you all to know that you've changed my life today. You've saved my home. You've saved my memories. You've saved my heart. She had to pause to wipe her eyes again. My husband Tom always believed in the goodness of people. He said that most folks want to do right by each other. They just need a chance to show it. Today, you've all proven him right. You've shown me that the world is full of angels, and I'm looking at them right now. More cheers. More applause. People were crying all over the property. Even the tough-looking bikers were wiping their eyes. I invited some cold, tired people into my home during a storm. Maggie continued. That's all I did. What you've all done for me in return is beyond anything I could have imagined. You've given me hope. You've reminded me that I'm not alone, that none of us are alone, that we're all connected. All family. She held up the check. This check means I get to keep my home. But what you've really given me is so much more than money. You've given me back my faith in humanity. You've shown me that kindness creates more kindness. That love multiplies when you share it. I'll never forget this day. Never. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to pay forward what you've given me. The crowd went wild. People were hugging each other. Some started chanting, Maggie, Maggie. Others were taking photos and videos, wanting to capture this moment of pure human goodness. Danny approached with Raymond and Chris. They were carrying a wooden sign they'd made in the barn. It read, The Henderson House Where Kindness Lives. We want to put this at the end of your driveway, Danny said. So everyone who passes will know this is a special place. A place where good things happen. Maggie nodded, too emotional to speak anymore. She just hugged them. These men who'd been strangers yesterday and were family today. As the afternoon wore on, the work continued, but the mood had shifted. It felt less like a work site and more like a celebration. Someone had brought a guitar and was playing music. Others were singing along. Mrs. Chen's food was being passed around. People were laughing and telling stories. Linda found Maggie sitting on her new porch, just watching everything with a smile on her face. You doing okay? She asked. I'm doing better than okay, Maggie said. I'm doing wonderful. I feel like I'm dreaming, but I know I'm awake. This is real. This is all real. It's real, Linda confirmed. And you deserve every bit of it. I just opened my door, Maggie said. That's all I did. That's everything, Linda said. In a world where people are taught to be suspicious, to lock their doors, to not trust strangers, you opened your door. You chose kindness over fear. That matters, Maggie. That matters more than you know. As the sun started to set, casting orange and pink light across the snow-covered farm, Maggie looked around at her transformed property. Her house was repaired. Her barn was running. Her pantry was full. Her future was secure. But most importantly, her heart was full. She thought about Tom and wished he could see this. But somehow she felt like maybe he could. The check for $47,000 sat on Maggie's kitchen table like something from another world. She kept looking at it, touching it, making sure it was real. Real paper, real ink, real numbers. $47,000. More money than she'd seen in one place in her entire life. Jake sat across from her, sipping coffee. Most of the crowd had left as darkness fell, but about 20 people remained, finishing up the last of the work and cleaning up the property. The house was quiet now, peaceful. I still can't believe it, Maggie said for probably the 20th time. Where did it all come from? Jake pulled out his phone and showed her. Everywhere. This club in Idaho collected $1,500 at a meeting last night. This group in Utah held a quick fundraiser at a local bar and raised $2,000. This woman in Oregon. She's a veteran's daughter. She sent 500. It just kept coming in. He scrolled through more messages. These guys in Wyoming organized a breakfast fundraiser this morning and raised 3,000. This website that supports veteran causes shared your story and donations poured in from all over the country. $20 here, $50 there, $100 from someone else. It all added up. Maggie shook her head in amazement. Strangers. All strangers giving their hard-earned money to help me. Not strangers, Jake corrected gently. Family. The veteran community is huge, Maggie. Millions of people. And we look after our own. You're a veteran's widow. That makes you family. And what you did for us, showing that kindness, that made people want to help even more. Carol, the financial advisor, came in from the living room where she'd been working on her laptop. Okay, Maggie, I've got some news for you. I've been coordinating with the county tax office all afternoon. She sat down and opened a folder full of papers. Your total back taxes with all penalties and interest come to $42,378. I've arranged for you to pay that on Monday morning. The county treasurer himself called me back. He wanted to say how moved he was by your story. Maggie's eyes widened. The county treasurer called you? He did. And here's the good part. That leaves you with $4,622. I'm setting up a savings account for you at the local bank. This will be your emergency fund, for unexpected repairs, medical bills, whatever comes up. She pulled out more papers. I've also restructured your monthly expenses. With the changes we discussed earlier, you're now saving about $300 a month. I want you to add 100 of that to your savings each month. Keep the other 200 for yourself. Little treats, gifts for your grandkids, whatever you want. I don't have grandkids, Maggie said with a small laugh. Yet, Carol said with a wink. But when you do, you'll be ready. Now I'm also setting you up with automatic bill payments for your utilities and such. No more worrying about missing a due date. It'll all happen automatically from your checking account. Maggie felt overwhelmed by all this financial talk, but Carol made it sound so simple, so manageable. You're giving me a whole new start, she said. That's the idea, Carol said. You've been struggling for too long, trying to manage everything alone. But you don't have to do that anymore. You've got people looking out for you now. Linda came in through the back door, stamping snow off her boots. The barn is all locked up. George left you detailed instructions on maintaining the tractor. He said to call him if you have any problems, but he doesn't think you will. Beth was right behind her. The fence is completely repaired. Kevin said it should last for years, and he left some extra lumber in the barn in case you need any small repairs down the road. Tommy and Raymond came in next. All the tools are organized and put away. We made you a map showing where everything is so you can find what you need. One by one, they gathered in Maggie's kitchen, these people who'd become so important to her in just one day. They sat around her table, drank coffee and tea, and talked like old friends. What are you going to do now? Linda asked Maggie. Now that you know the farm is safe? Maggie thought about it. I guess I'm going to live, she said simply. Really live, not just survive. I've been so stressed about money for so long I forgot what it felt like to just enjoy being alive. I want to feel that again. What did you use to enjoy? Beth asked. Before all the worry? Oh, lots of things. I used to bake all the time, bring treats to neighbors. I had a vegetable garden that won prizes at the county fair. I volunteered at the library reading to kids. I was part of a quilting circle with ladies from church. Maggie smiled at the memories. I had a life, you know? A full life. But then Tom got sick, and after he died, the bills piled up, and I just stopped. Stopped doing the things that made me happy. Well, now you can start again, Jake said. That's what this gift is really about. Not just saving your house, giving you back your life. Chris, the younger biker who'd fixed the stairs, spoke up. My grandma did the same thing after my grandpa died. Just sort of stopped living. She finally snapped out of it when my mom basically forced her to join a senior center. She started playing cards, taking art classes, making new friends. She said it saved her life. Maybe I need to do something like that, Maggie said thoughtfully. Get out more. Connect with people. Well, you've definitely connected with us, Raymond said with a laugh. You're stuck with us now. We're adopting you as the club grandmother. Everyone laughed, but Jake looked serious. He's actually not kidding, Maggie. We want to make you an honorary member of our club. If you'll accept. Maggie's hand went to her chest. Really? Me? Really. You embody everything we believe in. Service, sacrifice, kindness, courage. You're exactly the kind of person we want to be associated with. Jake pulled a folded piece of leather from his jacket pocket. "This is a club vest. We had a patch made for you." He unfolded it and showed her. A leather vest, sized for her with a special patch that read honorary member, and another patch with an angel on it. Below the angel it said Guardian of the Road. Maggie's eyes filled with tears again. She seemed to cry more today than she had in 5 years. "Guardian of the Road?" she asked. "Because you saved us," Linda explained. "You were our guardian that night. You kept us safe when we needed it most, and now we're going to keep you safe. That's how it works. We're family now." Maggie stood up and tried on the vest. It fit perfectly. She looked down at the patches, running her fingers over them. "I've never been part of anything like this before." "Well, you are now," Beth said, coming over to hug her. "Welcome to the family." They spent the next hour telling Maggie about upcoming club events. A charity toy drive in 2 weeks that she was invited to. A memorial ride in the spring for fallen veterans that they wanted her to attend. A summer barbecue where all the different clubs gathered. She was invited to everything. "You don't have to come to all of it," Jake said, "but you're always welcome. And if you ever need anything at all, you call. Someone will be here to help. That's a promise." As the evening grew late, people started saying their goodbyes. They'd all be heading home tomorrow after the roads were cleared, but first they wanted to make sure Maggie was settled and okay. Dorothy gave her a long hug. "You call me next week. We're going to have coffee and become proper friends." Kevin shook her hand. "If anything breaks or needs fixing, you call me. Day or night. I mean that." George, the mechanic, left her his card. "That tractor should run great, but if you have any trouble, I'm just a phone call away." One by one they said goodbye, all of them promising to stay in touch, all of them meaning it. This wasn't just a one-day thing. These were real connections being made. Real relationships forming. Finally, only the original 15 remained. The ones who'd been there during the blizzard. They gathered in the living room one last time, sitting in the same spots they'd sat in the night before. "This has been the most incredible 2 days of my life," Maggie said. "Yesterday I thought I was just helping some people stuck in a storm. I had no idea it would lead to all this." "Neither did we," Jake admitted. "But sometimes that's how life works. One small act of kindness creates ripples that spread farther than you can imagine." "Tom used to say that," Maggie said softly. "He said we never know how our actions will affect the world. He said to just do good and trust that it matters." "He was right," Linda said. "What you did matters. It mattered to us that night, cold and scared. And it's going to matter to a lot of other people too, because your story is inspiring them to be kinder, to be braver, to open their doors." They talked long into the night, sharing more stories, making plans to visit, exchanging contact information. Around midnight, they finally headed to bed, the 15 bikers finding their spots from the night before, Maggie going to her room. But before she went to sleep, Maggie knelt beside her bed like always. Tonight, her prayers were different. Tonight, she wasn't asking for help or strength or solutions. Tonight, she was just saying thank you. Thank you for the storm that brought these people to her door. Thank you for giving her the courage to open it. Thank you for showing her that kindness is never wasted. Thank you for saving her home and her heart. She climbed into bed and looked at Tom's photo on her nightstand. "You'd love these people," she whispered to the picture. "They're just like you. Good hearts, strong values, always ready to help." 3 months had passed since that incredible December weekend. It was now March, and Montana was starting to show the first hints of spring. The snow was melting, revealing brown grass that would soon turn green. Birds were returning, filling the air with songs that Maggie had missed during the long winter. She stood on her porch, the beautiful new porch that Kevin had built, drinking her morning coffee and watching the sun rise. This had become her favorite time of day. The quiet morning moments when she could think about how much her life had changed. The story of the kind grandmother and the bikers had spread far beyond Montana. It had been picked up by national news. The video of Maggie receiving the check with tears streaming down her face had been watched millions of times online. People across the country, even around the world, had been touched by the story. But more than that, the story had inspired action. Maggie got letters every single day from people telling her how she'd inspired them. A woman in Florida wrote that she'd started volunteering at a homeless shelter after hearing Maggie's story. A man in Texas said he'd reconciled with his brother after 20 years of not speaking. Because Maggie's kindness had reminded him that life was too short for grudges. Schools were using her story to teach children about kindness and community. Churches were organizing service projects in her name. Veteran organizations across the country had started programs to help military widows and widowers, inspired by what had happened to Maggie. "You've started a movement," her son Bobby had told her on the phone last week. He'd been amazed by everything that had happened. All three of her sons had wanted to come help pay her taxes, but she'd told them the story of how it had already been handled. They'd been shocked and moved and incredibly proud of their mother. The 15 bikers had become regular visitors. Jake and Linda came by at least once a week, sometimes more. They'd bring food, help with chores, or just sit and talk. Dorothy had become one of Maggie's closest friends. They had coffee together twice a week and had started a new quilting circle that met at Maggie's house every Tuesday. The Veteran Motorcycle Club had made Maggie their official mascot. She attended their events wearing her leather vest with pride. At the last charity ride, she'd even ridden on the back of Jake's motorcycle for a short distance. The feeling of the wind in her hair, the rumble of the engine beneath her, the freedom of the open road, it had made her feel young again. Made her feel alive. "Tom would laugh seeing me on a motorcycle," she'd told Jake, grinning from ear to ear, "but he'd also be cheering me on." The farm was thriving in ways Maggie hadn't thought possible. George the mechanic had taught her grandson, Bobby's oldest son Tyler, how to operate the tractor during a visit. Now Tyler was planning to spend his summer with Grandma Maggie, helping her plant a proper garden again. Her other grandchildren were making plans to visit too. The house that had felt too big and empty was about to be filled with family again. The money Carol had helped her save each month was adding up. Maggie had already accumulated nearly $1,000 in her emergency fund, and for the first time in years, she wasn't worried about unexpected expenses. When her washing machine broke last month, instead of panicking, she'd simply called a repairman and paid for it without stress. But the most important change wasn't financial. It was in Maggie herself. She'd started living again, really living. She was baking again, bringing treats to neighbors and to the motorcycle club meetings. Her vegetable garden was being prepared for spring planting. She'd rejoined her church quilting circle and started volunteering at the library again, reading stories to children every Thursday afternoon. The kids at the library loved her. They called her Motorcycle Grandma, after someone's parent had told them her story. Maggie would laugh and show them pictures on her phone of her with the bikers, of the workday when 100 motorcycles had lined her street. "Were you scared when all those bikers came?" one little girl had asked. "Not even a little bit," Maggie had answered. "Because I'd learned something important. When you do something kind, kindness comes back to you, sometimes in ways you never expect." Today was a special day. It was exactly 3 months since the blizzard, and the motorcycle club was coming back for an anniversary celebration. Not 100 people this time, just the core group, the original 15 who'd spent that night in her house, plus a few close friends from the club. Maggie had been cooking all week. Ham, potato salad, green beans, fresh bread, and her famous apple pie. Her kitchen smelled like heaven. The house was spotless and decorated with simple spring flowers from the local shop. Around noon, she heard the familiar rumble of motorcycles. Her heart lifted like it always did at that sound. She walked out onto her porch and waved as they pulled into her driveway. Jake was first, as always. He bounded up the porch steps and hugged her tight. "How's our favorite person?" "Better than ever," Maggie said honestly. Come in, come in. I've got food ready." They all filed in, bringing hugs and smiles and small gifts. Linda brought a photo album she'd made of the workday, with pictures of all the repairs, all the people who'd come to help. Beth brought a beautiful plant for Maggie's kitchen window. Tommy brought fresh coffee beans from a special roaster he knew. They gathered around Maggie's dining table, the same table where they'd eaten soup that first night. The conversation flowed easily, like family reunions do. They talked about upcoming events, shared stories from recent rides, asked Maggie about her plans for the garden. After lunch, Jake stood up and tapped his glass to get everyone's attention. "I want to say something. Maggie, 3 months ago, you changed all of our lives. What you did that night, opening your door without fear, treating us with such kindness, it reminded us why we do what we do. It reminded us what really matters." He paused, emotion showing in his usually tough face. "But what I don't think you realize is how many other lives you've changed. The story of what happened here has spread everywhere. And everywhere it goes, it inspires people to be better, to be kinder, to help each other." Linda stood up next. I've been tracking it online. There are now over 50 different community projects across the country that were directly inspired by your story. Veterans helping widows, neighborhoods organizing to help elderly residents, schools doing kindness challenges. You started all of that, Maggie. Raymond cleared his throat. In my town, they started a program called Maggie's Mission, where volunteers help senior citizens with home repairs. They've already helped 23 people in just 2 months. Beth shared her own story. I work at a hospital, and our staff started a fund to help families of veterans who are struggling financially. We've raised over $15,000 so far. We call it the Henderson Fund. Story after story, each person shared how Maggie's simple act of kindness had created ripples that kept spreading. It was overwhelming and beautiful and more than Maggie had ever imagined. I just opened my door, she said, her voice shaking. That's all I did. That's everything, Jake said firmly. In a world that teaches people to be afraid, to lock themselves away, to not trust anyone, you chose differently. You chose kindness. You chose to help. And that choice changed the world. Danny pulled out an envelope. We have something for you. The club voted unanimously on this. Maggie opened it with trembling hands. Inside was an official-looking certificate. It declared Margaret Henderson an honorary lifetime member of the Veterans Motorcycle Association, with all rights and privileges. But more than that, it announced the establishment of the Margaret Henderson Memorial Fund, a permanent endowment to help veterans and their families in need. We've already raised $23,000 for this fund, Danny explained. It'll help people like you, people who've sacrificed, people who are struggling, and it'll carry your name and your spirit forward for years to come. Maggie couldn't speak. She just held the certificate and cried, happy tears that she didn't try to hide. Chris, the youngest of the group, spoke up. You know what the best part is? My little sister heard your story and it changed her. She used to be really selfish, really focused on herself. But after she heard what you did and how people responded, something clicked. She started volunteering at a food bank. She's like a different person now. That's the power of what you started. As the afternoon turned to evening, they all moved out to the porch. Someone had brought a guitar, and they sang old songs as the sun set. The same sun that had set on that incredible weekend 3 months ago. But somehow everything felt different now. Better. More hopeful. Maggie sat in her rocking chair, surrounded by people who loved her, on a porch that had been rebuilt with love, on land that was securely hers, and felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Tom would be so proud, not just of how she'd helped these people, but of how she'd accepted their help in return, how she'd let them show her that she mattered, that her life had value, that her story wasn't over yet. What are you thinking about? Linda asked, sitting down next to her. I'm thinking about how one choice can change everything, Maggie said. That night during the blizzard, I could have stayed inside. I could have been afraid. I could have thought about all the reasons not to help. But I didn't. I just acted from my heart. And look what came from it.